Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker, and I am so excited to be joined by you guys once again here on a Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon shows are the shows that I'm going to be able to do here on Mondays going forward, just to let you know of the time that I'll be able to fit into my schedule. So I'm over here on the East Coast, get out of work at 5 o'clock, and I have a small time to be able to fit in an hour in between after work and what I've got going on the rest of the evening. So 2:15 Pacific is the time that I'll be able to go live Monday nights here, or Monday afternoons over on the West Coast. Could be more excited to be joined by you guys and to talk a little bit more about Dodgers baseball, because it is super exciting, because 1 week from today, pitchers and catchers will be reporting to spring training for your Dodgers, and baseball is just around the corner. It is practically a week away. I know spring training games don't start in a week. They start, but it's on, the 20th is when spring training games start, and we are on February 3rd, which, by the way, hope everyone had a good Groundhog Day, one of my favorite holidays of the entire year. For the Dodgers, spring training is starting really soon, which means we get to have a lot of fun conversations as far as what to look forward to going forward and what the Dodgers are going to do with the rest of the roster. Because I think a lot of the decisions as far as constructing the 2025 roster, which is the fun part of the offseason, is building the team of the future, building the team of 2025. Most of that is done. Doesn't mean that additional moves won't happen. I think there's probably some expected moves that they are likely to make over the course of the next couple of weeks that we can discuss, and certainly we will discuss it in just a little bit. But today's show, I think, is going to be a little bit of a fun overview, recap, as well as a little bit of a Q&A. The purpose of these shows is to be able to interact with you guys and to be able to just answer whatever questions that you have and really help build a community here, Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. First off, the first topic that we'll go into a little bit goes back to the previous show, and I'll thank you guys in just a minute for your response for all of that. But during the previous show, which we were able to do last Friday night, Casey and I went live. We were discussing the Kirby Yates signing. Kirby Yates is officially a Los Angeles Dodger, and the corresponding move that the Dodgers inevitably had to make was they were designating for assignment Ryan Brasier. Again, I just want to reemphasize this is the stance of both Casey and I believe the fair stance. We both believe Ryan Brasier is a phenomenal pitcher, and we wish him absolutely nothing but the best. What he did in 2023 and 2024 for the Dodgers was remarkable, given that he was a pitcher that was brought in that very easily could have been designated for assignment. He turned out to be perhaps their best relief pitcher in 2023 and a really solid arm when he was healthy, and pitched some really crucial innings during the postseason. For that, we're forever grateful for Ryan Brasier and what he's able to do. Hope he's able to land on his feet going forward. Ultimately, I believe that was the correct decision by the organization, given his lack of flexibility. But what that show turned into a little bit more, and this is actually what we spend a lot more time discussing, and I think it's a really intriguing observation that I made based on some comments that were put in our channel and other channels regarding Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor, and we'll get into this in just a little bit, because I think we'll be able to connect this a little bit with some rumors with Kik Hernandez and ask some very intriguing questions for you guys as far as sacrifices that you want to make on this roster. But it is my belief, and I'm restating my point that I had from Friday night, it is my belief that Chris Taylor is going to be on the Los Angeles Dodgers roster until at least mid-August, or sometime around there, maybe the end of August. And the reason why I stated that beforehand is there is a critical point in a major league player's career in which case they can be taken care of through a pension for the rest of their lives. And that is once they achieve 10 service years. Service years are calculated by the amount of time you're able to spend on the active roster or on the injured list. There also is some calculations. I don't know exactly when the service time starts for some players that are coming up through the system. You can't keep those guys down there forever. There's a lot of service time calculations that take place. But for a Chris Taylor, who cannot be sent down to the minor leagues, who does not have any minor league options because he signed a big league free agent contract. He has to be on the major league roster or the injured list until about mid to late August in order for him to receive that pension. And given the Dodgers' history, and this is my argument, it comes from a place of good faith with this organization, because I believe the organization wants to be a player destination franchise. And one of the ways you do that is how you treat your players. A lot of comments in the past. One of the things that I mentioned beforehand is how they treated Nick Ahmed last year, who does not have a history with the organization, but they made sure that he was able to reach that 10 years of pension in order for him to go ahead and be set up for the rest of his life. Meant a lot for him. A lot of people in the comments mentioned a player like an Andrew Toles, who the organization has kept care of. If you don't know that story, be sure to look up that story of what the organization has done for him going forward. I also mentioned the minor league system and how they treat their players down there, making sure that they're fed for years. I think that is something that is incredibly important. So if they take care of those type of players, if that is their history, and if they are an organization, that leans pretty heavily on their veteran players, why would they not do the same thing for Chris Taylor, who is this close to reaching his 10-year pension mark, as a way of treating him in good faith to be on this roster? And I'll get a little bit more into Chris Taylor, because I think some of the numbers are actually surprisingly good, and this was pointed out in one of the comments on one of the posts that Casey made on that. More on that in a second. I believe Chris Taylor is going to be on this Los Angeles Dodgers roster. You could mention, and this is some feedback that we've gotten related to this, that there could be a potential trade and he could reach this with another organization. Certainly a possibility, but I don't think other organizations have the same attachment to Chris Taylor like the Dodgers do. Meaning that I don't think they feel a necessity or responsibility like the Dodgers would to be able to keep him around until he reaches this 10-year service mark. I think this is something unique for the Dodgers with a Chris Taylor because of specifically what he has meant to this organization. And one of the reasons why this is one, Chris Taylor has earned this as being part of the Dodgers organization with what he has meant to this city, with all of the charity that he's done for the city, for what he has meant to the Los Angeles Dodgers as an organization over the past 8-9 years, however long he's been at the organization at this point. He has meant a lot to this team. And typically the Dodgers like to take care of those specific type of players. They like to take care of a Chris Taylor. And I believe it is the Dodgers who are going to try to take care of a Chris Taylor this upcoming season. Just has to remain on the 26-man roster, or part of this roster, from now until about mid to late August, whenever he's able to reach the 10 years of service. And then you can take a fair evaluation as far as Chris Taylor and how he's actually producing. One of the surprising things, and this is a little bit of a new observation, so this is something new that I'm presenting to you guys, is I actually want to talk a little bit, and because this was a comment that was made during the most recent post, and I validated it, for Chris Taylor. Really not a good first 2 months of the season last year. Actually, really, really not good for him. However, if you look at Chris Taylor's 2024 season, which we can all agree was not a successful season for Chris Taylor. Not a great season for him. You look at the overall grand picture, dip in production. But if you look at his numbers from the beginning of June 1st, all the way through the end of the regular season, would you believe me if I told you that Chris Taylor, in 159 plate appearances, not a whole lot, a little bit of a smaller sample size, but still decent enough sample size to get a picture of him from June 1st all the way to the end of the season, would you believe me in 2024 if I told you that Chris Taylor put up a 110 WRC plus? He put up a 110 WRC plus with about a 12% walk percentage and a strikeout percentage under 26%. You combine that aspect, which that's not saying that Chris Taylor is going to be that type of player. When you have that smaller sample size, if you have a couple of really good games, it could inflate it to just a little bit, but that is still really solid numbers for Chris Taylor. And those are the type of numbers that, especially with his versatility, you would like and live with as part of your roster, as part of your organization going forward. That being said, do I expect those numbers going forward? Not necessarily. But I think he still has a chance to be a decent player. But more, I feel like the Dodgers open up opportunities in the future with keeping Chris Taylor on their roster, particularly because this goes and reaffirms the Dodgers' commitment to being a destination franchise for other players. We hear a lot about other players wanting to be part of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and one of the reasons why they say that, one of the reasons why they believe that, is specifically because of the way the Dodgers go ahead and treat their players. We've seen other organizations maybe not treat their players to the high standard that the Dodgers set themselves up to treat their players. But you look at Nick Ahmed, you look at all these other players, and you look at their contract history of what they have recently. This is something that Casey and I went through. Some of their players, when their contract ends, reaches that 10-year of service time. Tyler Glasnow is an example. Teoscar Hernandez, Tanner Scott, Chris Taylor is one. Tommy Edman, all of these different players. Max Muncy, if his option is extended as well. All of these different players are there reaching that 10-year service mark. So it very clearly is something that the Dodgers are aware of and want to try to get to some of these players to that mark. And if they are able to do that, and if you're a person outside of this organization and you see them taking care of a Chris Taylor, taking care of a Tanner Scott, taking care of a Nick Ahmed, and then these things start to stack on top of each other, as well as them being continually a World Series, a team that is going to be competing for a World Series championship, along with them having the best coaches and staff around, all of these things start to stack onto each other, and they opens up opportunities for them to be able to get players, maybe even on discounts. I think that is a really positive thing for this organization. So Casey made a post on that on X, on Twitter, on Saturday, and it got a really good response from a lot of people, which was really encouraging to be able to hear. I just want to point out, I'm not just saying this just because I got a whole bunch of likes and retweets on that. I think this is significantly less about Dodgers Daily, because the reason why people like that or retweeted that is not because of Dodgers Daily. The reason why that is because the fans care about the players within their organization, and Chris Taylor has meant a lot to the Dodgers organization, and I believe the Dodgers are going to do everything in their power to be able to take care of those type of players that have meant so much to this organization. And with Chris Taylor, I think he's a perfect example of that, and that is my stance, and that is what I believe the organization is going to do going forward. Chris Taylor is going to be part of this team. Now, I'm not expecting him to get a whole lot of premium playing time based on the way his overall numbers looked last year, and given that there really isn't a whole lot of spots left on this roster. If you look at the projected starting lineups, there's either a opening at center field or second base. Maybe shortstop if Mookie Betts is the second baseman, but depending on where Tommy Edman plays, the other spot is going to open up for somebody to be able to take that opportunity. Could be a Chris Taylor, although I think that's a little bit more of a dark horse. I expect him to kind of fill in as needed, and by the mid to end of August, you're talking about 200 plate appearances, maybe 250 plate appearances, or 300 plate appearances if things aren't going so well for other players. There might be some injuries or stuff. That, I think, is the cost that you're going to have going forward with a Chris Taylor. So I think there's a lot of good things to be able to do that, but I think it's also important to remember, and this is not something that I came up with, neither is the 10 years of service time. This is stuff that I observed and then starts to make a lot of sense to me going forward. With Chris Taylor, he was also really productive at the plate last year during the last couple months of the season. As I stated, Chris Taylor, June 1st all the way to the end of the season, was a 109, 110? I think it was 110 WRC plus player. 252, 340 on base percentage, just under 400 slugging percentage. That's not bad for a player that's going to come off the bench and can be pretty versatile. So I think that's one of the reasons why Chris Taylor is going to be within this organization. So then that brings up the question, and this is something that discussed a little bit. We'll discuss a little bit more today because Dodgers Fest was over the weekend. I believe it was on Saturday, and it seems like, based on some comments that Andrew Friedman has made, that the door isn't and probably never will be closed for Kike Hernandez, or at least for this upcoming season. The door is not closed for Kike Hernandez. So one of my questions for you guys is Kike Hernandez an essential part to the 2025 Dodgers, not the 2024 Dodgers, which he absolutely was. Is he an essential part for the 2025 Dodgers that you are willing to sacrifice opportunities and potential future assets in order to get him on the roster? And I'll explain that in just a minute. First off, I want to make a little bit of a comparison with Kike Hernandez and with a Chris Taylor, just to put a little bit of things into context. Kike Hernandez is incredibly valuable for this Dodgers team once they get to October. I believe he's a 134 WRC plus player in his career during the postseason. Last year put up a 129 WRC plus in the postseason, had a couple of really clutch moments. We've seen him have a ton of success in the postseason, to the point where it's very difficult for me to be able to argue that, even though I typically lean towards a little bit more of the larger sample sizes. Kike Hernandez had a really poor start to the season, but one of the things that fans will often point out is once Kike Hernandez was able to wear glasses, once he got his eyes checked out, he was a significantly better hitter, and that certainly is true. You look at the overall numbers for Kike Hernandez, and they were not great last year. His first couple months of the season were really rough, but once he wore glasses I would look back, and the date that I was able to find was the last game in the Philadelphia Phillies series when they were in Philadelphia. This was, I believe, July 11th. I looked at July 10th. He wasn't wearing glasses. July 11th, he was. That led into the series in Detroit and then the All-Star break. So it's about this time when Kike Hernandez started wearing glasses. During those 189 plate appearances during the regular season, Kike Hernandez put up a 109 WRC plus wearing glasses, which is basically, and this is perhaps not the most fair comparison. Kike Hernandez did this from July 11th all the way to the end of the regular season, whereas Chris Taylor's numbers include less plate appearances and cover June all the way to the end of the season. You look at Kike Hernandez with glasses, 109 WRC plus, and Chris Taylor's 110 WRC plus. Not saying that they are the exact same players, not saying that Kike Hernandez is worse or Chris Taylor is better than the other. I believe Kike Hernandez is the better hitter at this point of his career than a Chris Taylor. But that's an intriguing observation to make, is Kike Hernandez with glasses was as productive, if you look at the numbers wise, WRC plus wise, as Chris Taylor was June to the end of the season. Just intriguing thought to be able to keep in your mind. Again, try to come with this as unbiased as you possibly can be with this, because one of the reasons and one of the things that you have to think about with bringing back Kike Hernandez, who was a valuable player as part of this team and continues to be, and I try not to argue too much against this because I actually do believe that Kike Hernandez will be back in the 2025 season, is that there are sacrifices that come with bringing Kike Hernandez onto this roster, not just for 2025, but for future years as well, and what this roster is going to look like in the future going forward. Because you don't just have to ask yourself with Kike Hernandez, okay, what's going to happen in 2025? You bring him on, you have a three-way competition between James Outman, Andy Pages, and Hae-Sung Kim for the final roster spot to be able to make it, and depending on who wins that, the other two guys are optioned down the minor leagues, and then perhaps you can move guys back and forth, assuming that everybody else on the 26-man roster, the other 12 players, including Kike Hernandez, are healthy. I think that's the most likely outcome and most likely observation that is going to be able to have going what the Dodgers are going to do in 2025. But that does come with potential sacrifices to this team. Whether that is a send James Outman down and you don't get to see what exactly happens if you send James Outman down and Andy Pages plays a whole lot of center field, your defense in the outfield is not going to be very good. Now, we've talked about the Dodgers have targeted specific pitchers that have more swing and miss stuff, so that might not be as bad of a thing as you might initially anticipate, but that is a sacrifice that you're going to make. If it is we want to make the defense pretty solid and you call James Outman up and you send Andy Pages down, then the question becomes, and this is some comments that I've gotten, and this is actually, if you go back to the shows immediately around or after the Teoscar Hernandez signing, I almost started to lean a little bit into, okay, what is the possibility that the Dodgers could look to potentially trade an Andy Pages? And I do not say that lightly, nor am I saying that that is likely good to happen at this point. I don't believe it is. But if you use up his final option year, he has to be on the big league roster for the rest of his tenure for the Dodgers. And let's think a little bit forward going ahead. Let's talk about some other names that are going to be coming up. Let's say that you want to bring up and have part of this team Dalton Rushing, not in 2025, but 2026. Where is he going to get opportunities? It's either going to be corner outfield or maybe some Will Smith off days. Okay, fair enough. But let's go back to the conversation that we had with Chris Taylor. And please follow along with me a little bit. Again, if you need to go back and rewind some of my logic, or I'd be happy to explain this a little bit more. One of the players that the Dodgers have taken care of a lot, and is going to be very close to reaching his 10 years of service if he remains on this team for the entirety of the season, is Austin Barnes. Austin Barnes is currently at 8.098 service years, which means that if he's on the active roster on the injured list for all of the 2025 season, he would only need to get until about June-ish for him to reach his 10 years of service. If they're doing this for Chris Taylor, there's a good chance that they would do this potentially for an Austin Barnes, which doesn't automatically mean that Dalton Rushing is going to spend all of his time down at the minor leagues. What it could mean is they want to have him play a little bit more time in the outfield, in the corner outfield, for him to get opportunities. Could be a possibility. There could be 3 potential guys that they have at the catching position in 2026 if they want to get Austin Barnes to 10 years of service. Well, does that eliminate more of Andy Pages' opportunities in the outfield going forward? And what if they want to go after a guy like a name of Kyle Tucker? The reason why I'm asking these questions is you will not get anywhere close to the value of Andy Pages during the 2025-2026 offseason with him having 0 minor league options as you would potentially have the opportunity to now. So what is the plan going forward? And is his role, is his spot so incredibly crucial, and the depth that he's able to provide, is his role, his spot so incredibly crucial for the 2025 Dodgers that you're willing to give up and sacrifice some of the future value or some of the value that Andy Pages has right now for a little bit less value? Does he play that critical part of a role, or do we have to wait and see, and perhaps this is something that you look forward to during spring training? I think that is fascinating, and that is a conversation that comes out if you decide to go out and bring back a Kike Hernandez inadvertently because of other players that are on this roster, or perhaps this is something that you talk about potentially with a guy like a Dalton Rushing as well, although he is not on the active roster, and once he gets added to the active roster, he will have a little bit more minor league options. Intriguing things to be able to think about, because every single signing, every single addition has collateral damage or different effects for the rest of the roster. While it seems like, yes, there is room for Kike Hernandez, certainly there is, there's going to be a cost to that. And one of the things that I've addressed this entire offseason is the opportunity cost and the investment that I believe that the Dodgers need to make into some of the younger guys, because if you add up and you look at this roster, there are a lot of guys that are signed up for longer term deals, which is good as long as those players remain good. Which, good thing for the Dodgers, they typically sign up really, really good players, and you would anticipate them to be good, but at some point their production is going to decrease a little bit. And one of the ways that you can help supplement that is with younger players that are going to be able to help fulfill that and be able to help fill into different roles. And at some point, the Dodgers are going to have to invest into some of their younger players at some point. Is that going to happen in 2025? Maybe not a whole lot, which, if you want to field the best team, there could be a good argument to say that this is the best team that the Dodgers should have, and as they're going to push for a World Series championship, they should field the best roster that they probably should. At some point, they're going to have to make an investment, and at some point, they're going to have to make a choice. I believe that they're going to re-sign Kik Hernandez, and I think he's going to provide a lot of depth and be a great clubhouse presence for the Dodgers. That's going to have some downstream effect, and the Dodgers have to make some difficult decision at some point of what they're going to do. Otherwise, they're going to lose out on some of the value players that they have. And I don't want to see all of these guys sitting in Oklahoma City for the rest of their careers. That is not fair to them, nor is that good for the Dodgers to be able to do. If you don't have a role, nor do you see a good role for them in the future, perhaps there's some other avenue, some other way that you can go about approaching this to be able to help better your team either now or in the future. Just interesting thoughts to be able to think about when you're talking about the Kik Hernandez signing or potential signing going forward with the Dodgers. If he does get signed, which I will be happy if he does get signed, because Kik Hernandez is awesome, part of the Dodgers. If he does, at this point, because we are a week away from pitchers and catchers reporting, which once pitchers and catchers report, players can move to the 60-day injured list. I would anticipate Kik Hernandez being signed once pitchers and catchers report. You can move some of the injured pitchers, which there are 4 or 5 that you can move to the 60-day injured list. You can move one of those pitchers over to the 60-day injured list, make room for Kik Hernandez, and then that's 12 of the 13 offensive positions filled in. One of the counter arguments to my point, which you could certainly make, as far as I could be looking a little bit too far in the future, there's not a whole lot of position players signed to this active roster. So if somebody gets hurt or somebody goes down, there's not a whole lot of guys that could fill in shoes. Totally fair argument. There's not a whole lot that I can say other than you do have guys that are sitting down at the minor leagues waiting for an opportunity. If you decided to move off of let's say a Andy Pages or a James Outman, somebody from the outfield, perhaps you could turn to a Ryan Ward type figure who deserves an opportunity at some point to be able to fill in just for a little bit, even if you just need a bat off the bench. If you need somebody from the infield, perhaps you could turn to a David Bodie, who they signed to a minor league deal, or an Austin Gauthier, or somebody like that, or even a Hae-Sung Kim as well. There are a lot of different avenues that the Dodgers could go, and I believe that they could fill in at bats if they want to take advantage of some of the value that they have. Yes, I believe in these players, and I believe that they're incredibly talented, but they're only going to be talented, and they're only going to achieve their best if they are given the opportunity to be able to do so. And if the Dodgers aren't able to provide them that opportunity to be able to reach their potential, to reach the level that they have, then that's an absolute shame for the Dodgers. One, it could be something that the Dodgers are trying to field the best team, but if that's the case, do your best to be able to set up your team for a lot of success on the future as well. That a lot of talking, a lot of different arguments that the Dodgers have. They do a lot of things right, and I believe that they're going to make the decision that's going to make the most sense for them going forward. It's going to be fascinating in spring training if it is a battle for one roster spot between them, because there is a good argument for all three of them. A little bit less so for Kim, just because I haven't had a chance to watch him, but the Dodgers have, and they signed him for a reason. So it's going to be really fascinating to be able to watch. what I want to do now is transition a little bit into the chat, be able to interact with you a little bit. We will be doing this until about 3:15 Pacific, so another 30 minutes or so. And so we'll be able to interact with you guys a little bit. Excited to be able to do so. Daniel Ashford, thank you for joining us. Player Gregory as well. Kristen Navarro, CNAF, thank you very much for joining us. BC, talking a little bit Lakers. I do not know practically anything about basketball, nor do I have any connection with the Los Angeles Lakers, so I'll let you check that out with somebody else. Stephen T, thank you for joining us. Gregory, Austin, what is the health update on Dustin May? Is he going to pitch on opening day? It's a really good question, and the honest answer is I have no idea. And there's a lot of people have no idea what the health status of Dustin May is, even if he was feeling good and healthy, ready to go. I think there's also a question with him based on past injuries. Is he going to be able to get through all of spring training healthy to be able to start the season? It's a really good question. I don't know the health status. I don't receive a whole lot of health updates from the organization, and they're going to release those health updates as needed. If he is healthy, and if the rest of the pitchers are healthy, their rotation as it currently stands is full. There's no room for a Landon Knack. There's no room for a Bobby Miller. There's no room for any of these guys because I'm assuming if everybody is healthy, not counting Shohei Ohtani, who we know is going to be out, or the other guys that are going to be out, all of the different roster spots are going to be filled up because what you're going to be having, if this is the case, for all of these different guys, looking at the different pitching options, you'd have Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshi Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, Tony Gonsolin. Those would be a lot of your starting pitchers, and then you can throw Dustin May in there. And then you would have Tanner Scott, Kopech, Trinan, Phillips, Yates, Kirby Yates, Anthony Banda, and Alex Vesia in the bullpen. The only people that can be options are Sasaki, Gonsolin, and Vesia. None of them are spending time at the minor leagues unless it's an absolute emergency. So Dustin May's health, really, it's going to be fascinating to see if he is healthy to start the season. Obviously, we all hope that he is because his stuff is ridiculous when he is healthy. He has some of the best stuff in the game of baseball when he's healthy. That always is the question for him, though. And then once he is healthy, becomes a question of how do you navigate this roster? How do you make sure these arms are as healthy and as rested and ready to go for October? That'll be the question for going forward. Sammy Boy Smith, thank you for joining us. Great. CT3 can be a scout here or a bench coach. He's going to be for the Dodgers. He's going to be on their Dodgers active roster, I believe, for a majority of the season, given the reasons that I've outlined. 10-year of pension, which does mean something to these players, does mean something to a whole lot of things. I know there are a lot of people can point to the money that Chris Taylor has earned throughout his career, which certainly he has earned a lot of money throughout his career. This is an added bonus, another nice thing that the organization can do for Chris Taylor, and just another show of appreciation for not just what he's done on the field, but what he continues to do off the field through a lot of different charities and what he's meant to the organization. I think that's going to be really important. CNAV, Christopher Navarro, great question, Gregory. I'm interested in if Frasso, Sheehan, or Gavin Stone will be available this year. Kyle Hurt as well. Good question. If I had to guess, my guess, which this does not come from any inside information, just want to clarify with this, my guess would be the two that would be most likely to appear would be Nick Frasso and Emmett Sheehan. There is potentially some good news. Emmett Sheehan, I believe, is throwing right now. Potentially May, June, from something that I saw online. Again, I don't remember exactly who that was from, so take that with a grain of salt. And then Nick Frasso missed all of the 2024 season, so you would expect him potentially to come back at some point in the 2025 season. Pretty exciting to see if they're able to come back, but then it comes to the question of how much opportunity are they able to get. Good question. We'll see what happens. All of those guys, as you mentioned, Frasso, Sheehan, Stone, Kyle Hurt, incredibly talented pitchers, and once they are healthy, the Dodgers would be lucky to have them as part of their rotation, as part of their staff, because they've got ridiculous stuff, including guy that you haven't seen at the big league level, like Nick Frasso. His stuff is ridiculous. Continuing on right here, Sam Boy Smith, I think we'll get the Mets version of Michael Conforto this year. Yeah, it's exciting to see the Dodgers go out and get a player like a Michael Conforto, and to think about the possibilities of what he's going to be able to do this season. Talk a lot about, and there's a lot of conversation about, is home and road splits last year. San Francisco did not hit well in that ballpark. Much more of a pitcher-friendly environment, pitcher-friendly ballpark. Put him in an environment with the protection that the Dodgers have in this lineup, surrounded by Hall of Famers, surrounded by superstars, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, all of these different guys, and you're talking about Michael Conforto being the 6, 7, or 8 hitter in this lineup. I think there's going to be a lot of good things going forward. And to your point, he was a really solid player for the New York Mets. Really solid, really good at the plate. If the Dodgers, for what they were able to get out of Teoscar Hernandez, what they were able to get out of Teoscar Hernandez last year, is any indication of what they believe they will get out of Michael Conforto this upcoming season, you're in for a really exciting season. And there's a reason why the Dodgers paid $17 million for that type of player and were willing to sacrifice one of the corner outfield spots, one of the spots where in Andy Pages, this was my position going into the offseason and probably what I would have done. I wanted Andy Pages to have one of those corner outfield spots to invest in some of the younger players. They decided not to do that specifically because Michael Conforto has that potential to be a big impact bat, and they are continuing to invest in those type of bats. And so I think Michael Conforto has a really good chance to be a really solid season because I trust the Dodgers and their scouting department. I think they get a lot of things right, and I think they get things right more often than what they don't, and a lot better than some other organizations do as well. CNAV talking a little bit about the road splits. Chuck Huddleston, thank you very much for joining us. Mike Boyer, good afternoon. There's not a whole lot of news on the Dodgers front as far as new signings that the Dodgers have, which we're spoiled as Dodgers fans. The Dodgers make a whole bunch of different moves. Past 2 offseasons, last offseason, this offseason, they're signing a lot of different star players and making their team as good as they possibly can be. Not a whole lot of news on this front. We'll see what happens going forward over the next week or so, as we are 1 week away until pitchers and catchers are reporting. Taylor can only contribute to an MiLB team by retiring. I disagree with that, and I point you to these numbers that what he had during the last couple months of the 2024 season. 110 WRC plus. Those are the exact same numbers that Kik Hernandez had in 20 to 30 less plate appearances once Kik Hernandez had glasses. So not the Kik Hernandez that didn't have glasses beforehand, but the ones that did have glasses. Chris Taylor put up practically the exact same numbers in a little bit less plate appearances. It's a little bit hard to be able to argue that once you're able to do that. Now, do I expect Kik Hernandez to be a better player than Chris Taylor this upcoming season? Probably. And it could be a little bit biased based on what we've seen from October. But I think with Chris Taylor, I think he's earned the right to be able to do that. And we'll see what happens going forward for his swing change, for what happens, any sort of mechanical adjustments he's made. It's totally possible, and it wouldn't be unusual. He wouldn't be the first player if things just don't go well this upcoming season. But if you're talking about Chris Taylor, he is the 12th or 13th member off of the bench. Does not get a whole lot of playing time, if that is the case. Remember, that typically is a spot that has been reserved for maybe some younger guys, and they don't get a whole lot of spots. There's not going to be a whole lot of opportunities for him, even if he is able to stick around on this roster. So I disagree a little bit with you, BC, on that. I wouldn't go necessarily that far. Gregory, I don't want to give up Bobby Miller for him. I don't know exactly who you're talking about right there. But Bobby Miller, really good player. Bobby Miller is. Chuck Huddleston, Kike probably kicks Pages to Oklahoma City, which may derail his progress. That is, it is a very real concern that I have. And this is not just for Andy Pages. This is a concern that I have going forward. And this could just be a little bit of a philosophical difference that I have with what some of the moves that the Dodgers are making. Not all of the moves, but some of the moves and what I believe that the organization has to do going forward. Again, a lot of this stuff could be cleared up. There could be injuries that take place, and the Dodgers want to make sure that they have the necessary depth to make it through the season. But I think there is real value in investing plate appearances, investing time, investing resources into minor league players, invest into younger players that are going to be potentially part of their future. Dodgers are great at going out and acquiring players through free agency, acquiring players through trade that are have a little bit longer of a track record, might be a little bit older, and certainly they have the ability to be able to do that, and they somehow continue to have some of the best farm systems in the game of baseball. Turns out their scouts are really good, their player development staff is really, really good. All of these make for them to continue to have a really good farm system, which you can turn into other great players. I also think that there is value for as much as they invest in these younger players, as much as they invest into the farm system, to be able to still invest playing time at the major league level for some of these younger guys. You might disagree, you might say put the best team out there as possible, but if one or two or if a couple of these contracts start to not look good, and then you did not invest time into younger players, and you're starting to look around, you have one of the long-term contracts just doesn't start to look good, or you have a guy locked up and he's taking up a roster spot. Like a lot of people view a Chris Taylor, his contract does not look as good as it did when the Dodgers initially signed it. Doesn't mean that Chris Taylor is or was a bad player at that time. Things happen over the course of careers. I believe that there is some value in being able to invest in some of these younger players that could potentially turn into some stars. Because let's put it this way, Andy Pages this upcoming season, if he gets 200, 250 plate appearances, which right now I think would be a decent enough, like on Fangraphs, currently projected for 300 plate appearances. Let's put it at that. If he gets 300 plate appearances this upcoming season, he will not turn into the player that everybody is expecting Andy Pages to be, because he is not given the opportunity to be completely acclimated to the big league level. Dalton Rushing. If the Dodgers don't present him with regular opportunities, let's say that they go out and they sign a Kyle Tucker next offseason, and then they have Kyle Tucker and Teoscar Hernandez at their corners, which would be awesome because Kyle Tucker is one of the best players in the game of baseball. They will not have room for a Dalton Rushing at that point because you would still have Freddie Freeman for 2 more years. You would have catcher locked up. There becomes not a whole lot of room for that type of player to be part of this team long term, which does run into some risk if you have long-term contracts or players signed to longer-term deals if they do not perform well. Because as Chris Taylor, in part of his case, one of the reasons why they're not going to move off of him, yes, it has in part to do with 10 years of service time. I think that is a really big part. But part of it is you typically don't just get rid of contracts just to get rid of contracts. With Chris Taylor, I don't believe they're going to be trading him as any part of salary dump. I think that he's going to be part of the Dodgers, and if he wasn't, I think they would go and try to trade him, but I think it would ultimately end up with him releasing him and them still having to take and pay for the money that they're owed him. I think there is value with investing in some of the younger players, and I think that could bear some fruit if some of those players start to become regular contributors. Will Smith would not have become a regular contributor unless the Dodgers presented him with consistent enough at-bats at the big league level to be able to get acclimated and to be able to prove himself at the big league level. Same thing goes with a lot of the other players in this system. And I think that would present at least a little bit of value, which creates a little bit of hesitation on my part with bringing back Kike Hernandez. Although on this show, we try to do and think how the organization would, and given what Kike has meant to the city of Los Angeles, and given his versatility and what he can provide and what he does for the clubhouse, it would be my guess that Kik Hernandez is going to be back for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that's going to make a whole lot of Dodgers fans happy because Kik Hernandez is a really fun player and really talented too, and provides a lot of value with what he's able to provide. Gregory, Chuck, that's how I feel about Bobby Miller. He needs to get back on the saddle and some pitch time. We'll see what happens with Bobby Miller. He's got elite stuff, as Chris Navarro is able to say. Let's continue going on here. We'll go to a couple of more comments right now. Let's see. Continuing on. Sorry, the chat just totally jumped on me. What's up, Danielsbury Sports Highlights? Thank you very much for joining us. History man, go Dodgers, and God bless, back to you right now. Seems like when teams win it all, they seem to go on a gradual decline. The Dodgers, on the other hand, will get better. That's what's fascinating about the team, and this is what having some of the great scouts does for you, is you continue to have elite talent, and when you invest that back in your team, and when you invest it properly, and I think the Dodgers have invested it properly because they've gone after the superstar elite level players like Shohei Ohtani, like when they invested in Mookie Betts, going out and getting Freddie Freeman. When you invest in the right player, it bears a whole lot of fruit, and the Dodgers have gotten a lot of those right now. Chuck Huddleston, Outman is in a now or never spot. Otherwise, I think he is moved. It's a really good thought. James Outman, be interesting to see what he does. I believe in the talent still of James Outman. Perhaps you don't. I know what he is capable and able to do. But I think you're right. If he gets optioned down to the minor leagues at any point this upcoming season, we'll have 0 minor league options. And unless he tears it up for the Dodgers this upcoming season, to where the Dodgers would want to keep him on the active roster, there wouldn't be any sort of flexibility that he would have. He would have the same amount of ability to be sent down to the minor leagues as a Teoscar Hernandez would. And Teoscar Hernandez can't be sent down to the minor leagues, and the exact same thing would happen to a James Outman. And that is the exact same predicament that an Andy Pages has. If they go ahead and sign Kyle Tucker next offseason, this outfield starts to become a lot more crowded, and you would be relying upon Andy Pages to play center field if you wanted to go out and get Kyle Tucker next offseason and have Teoscar Hernandez and Kyle Tucker in the corner outfield spots. So what happens this spring training and the decision that the Dodgers make is going to have a big impact for Andy Pages and James Outman and their future for this organization and what they do. Let's see. Kim seems very humble. Chuck says absolutely does. Let's see. Continuing on right here. A couple more comments that we will get to. Justin Yamas, thank you very much for joining us from France. Let's see. Asking a little bit about the trade. There's a lot of comments. You guys are happy about the Los Angeles Lakers and making the trade. It's exciting. Let's see. Chuck Alderson, February 20th for the Cubs is going to be when the February 20th is going to be the first spring train versus the Cubs. I will be there. CNAV is reporting, so feel free to be able to interact with me if you get a chance to see me. I'll be there with my dad. It's going to be a really fun time to be able to do so. Let's continue on. Roy Estrada, Austin, that was a great breakdown. Let me provide feedback on, Dodgers fans evaluate players based on what they see on the field or TV. Absolutely they do. They evaluate a lot of the players on what they see. It is awesome to be able to see what they're able to do, and Roy Estrada continue to do. Let's see. We are a little bit biased when we come to evaluate players because we have a little bit of a relationship, and is not really a fan of chastising fans when they're a little bit critical of players. Opinion only. It is. I will give you this, Roy Estrada. We do have a relationship with a lot of these players, especially players that come up with the organization, and I think it is totally fair to be able to go ahead and say that we have a bias, because in all honesty, Casey and I are biased. We see these guys at the minor league level. If you talk about the games that we have, just think about from my perspective. Got work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Loons games are the games that I go ahead and watch, which typically start 7 o'clock Eastern time over here. Remember, I'm on the Eastern time, so I get to watch the minor league system with the Loons every single chance that I get. And when I'm not at the Loons games, watching the Dodgers games at home, don't always make it to the end of the game, though, because the game usually ends 1 o'clock. Got to wake up super early the next day. Doesn't mean I don't catch as many games as it possibly can be, but a lot of the action that I'm able to see is the action at the minor league level. And it's amazing to be able to have that. And yes, we do have a bias. Doesn't mean that I think the players on the Loons are greater than the Dodgers. They're not. But I see a lot of the upside and a lot of the potential that they have. When it comes to other fans, and when it comes to you guys, I think it is totally fair to have criticisms of players that are at the big league level, or players that are even at the minor league level. I think that is totally fair. When it comes to those criticisms, though, in what faith are you having those criticisms? And I will use a player like a Michael Grove for an example. When the Dodgers decided to designate for assignment Ryan Brazier, which we haven't heard if he's made it past waivers or he's going to be released, or if the Dodgers are going to trade him. I believe they have a couple more days to be able to do so. When it comes to a lot of that, and if you look on social media, there is a lot of criticism on a player like Michael Grove, and I'm specifying him individually in order to make a point. When it comes to a player like that, in what faith are you trying to make those criticisms? If it becomes an argument to where you want to do a direct comparison between a Ryan Brazier and a Michael Grove and argue, hey, I believe Ryan Brazier is the better player than a Michael Grove, and this is why, based on what he's done at the big league level, and I believe that he's going to continue to be that type of player. And yes, I know that there's a crunch on the 26-man roster, and I don't know how the math's going to work, but I believe things typically work out because we've seen how many injuries that the Dodgers have had. And I believe that Michael Grove would have been the better option to designate for assignment because I believe Ryan Brazier is the better pitcher, and I'd figure out the roster spots afterwards. If it's that type of argument and that type of criticism, I have no issues with whatsoever. In fact, those are the type of arguments and those are the type of thinking that I love and that I like to be able to interact with. However, if your criticism of individual players consists of cursing out players or saying this player sucks and not providing any sort of explanation for that, I don't typically gravitate towards that. One, because players have a lot of talent. Even a player like a Michael Grove, even players within the system, even the players at the lowest level of the system still has a lot of talent. It is about finding that consistency. And if it's hey, I don't necessarily like this pitch or the pitch sequences of a Michael Grove, I think that is fair assessments. And I only utilize him because there's been a lot of criticism specifically directed in his direction. I could say the exact same thing for a player like a James Outman. When it comes to these type of players, in what faith are you making these arguments? And if the simple assumption is just say this player is not good or this player sucks or cursing out those types of players, that type of criticism is personal. And that type of criticism I don't necessarily like. Maybe not this player sucks. I just don't think it is conducive for a lot of good conversation. And I believe that when Casey and I, when we're talking about this venture here at Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network, we want to, one, create an environment that is similar to the Dodgers culture. If you go to the minor league level, which some of you have access to if you're in California, please, during this upcoming season, go check out the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, which, by the way, congratulations, John Shoemaker, returning as the manager down in Rancho. Super excited for him for that. If you go to those games and you start to be around the culture of there, it is a positive culture. It is an uplifting culture. It is a culture where they understand that there is an insane amount of failure in the game of baseball. The old saying of if you fail 7 out of 10 times at the plate, you're a Hall of Famer. Understanding that there is a lot of failure that naturally comes in the game of baseball, we try to be as uplifting as the people, the personnel within the Dodgers system are. And I think that leads to a lot of our fans for this. It leads to a lot of bias because we think that these players can be really good, because I think a lot of these players can be. A lot of it comes down to, are they able to be consistent enough? Are they able to tap into the tools that we know that they can have? That would be a little bit of my pushback. Is I think it comes from a little bit of an individualized basis when it comes to criticism of players. If it comes to a conducive for different arguments and different discussion, I'm not only welcome to it, I open that up and love those type of conversations. But if it's just to say some sort of point or just to make yourself look smart, don't necessarily love those type of criticisms. So that would be a little bit of my feedback to you, Roy Estrada. That would be something where I'd be open to having some more discussion, and always looking for here at Dodgers Dawgs to make ourselves a little bit better and to be able to try to build this show for you guys and make this the best place that we can possibly make it. So that would be my feedback to you, Roy Estrada. Thank you for your feedback, and thank you for your continued support here on Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. Let's continue to go with this. Right here, Mr. Seabads, I'll translate what the Lakers just did. It's the Red Sox trading Mookie to LA, but version 2.0, and the Mavs got fleeced. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that, and I think it is obviously exciting for Lakers fans to see able to do that. We'll see what happens, though. Not a huge basketball fan, so I'll let you continue to do that. Let's see. Craig Osterberg. Young players don't win championships. Veterans who are 25-26 have a better chance. I believe that is true, Craig Osterberg. But what happens when this current crop of Dodgers moves on? What happens when Mookie Betts starts getting a little bit too old? When they can't rely on Freddie Freeman? When Teoscar Hernandez ages out? When even Shohei Ohtani might be a little bit diminished from what he has right now? No, these are thoughts that we don't typically have, but it is important to always be thinking about the future of the organization as well. And I'm not talking about investing all of your plate appearances or even a vastly significant amount of plate appearances, but I think investing at least a little bit now can pay off a little bit down the road, because what you don't want to do as an organization is have a whole lot of contracts loaded up onto your team and then not have spent any time investing into younger players, and have the players that you have signed up for long-term deals start to really fade out and their production starts to decrease, and you have no way to be able to escape that as an organization. That's when teams start to downfall a little bit. That's when dynasties start to crumble. And what I am proposing is trying to make sure that the dynasty stays alive as long as it possibly could. So it becomes a question of, philosophically wise, do you want to maximize what you have right now and put everything that you can into right now while the opening is there? Or how much do you try to invest into the future of this dynasty as well? It's a really intriguing philosophical debate, baseball organization-wise, as far as what you want to be able to do. Continue to go. So let's continue to go to a couple of these comments right here. We'll get to just a couple more. I got to sign off here in just a couple of minutes right now. Continuing on right here, Mr. Seabad asked Casey if he'll be selling Dodgers Dawgs merchandise at spring training. I actually don't know if Casey's going to be able to go to spring training or not, but I would certainly reach out to him if you're interested in any sort of Dodgers Daily, Dodgers Dawgs merch. I'm sure he'd be able to, and more than happy to be able to interact and be able to hook you up with any of that. Gregory, have you ever been to Indianapolis Indians game down there? Indianapolis having a AAA team, I believe, for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I have never made my way down there, mostly because don't get a chance to see the Great Lakes Loons there. That's in a different league than what the Loons typically play in. Get to one or two more comments right now. Let's see. Mr. Seabad, I'm concerned the Lux trade may haunt the Dodgers. The Reds are trending high with young talent and may be a future problem. Yeah, it'd be exciting if Gavin Lux is able to have a lot of success for the Cincinnati Reds. I certainly hope that he's able to have a whole lot of success with them. Might haunt them a little bit, but I think it was also the right thing to be able to do, because they're, with Gavin Lux, there really wasn't a whole lot of flexibility that the organization had at second base and a whole lot of openings that they had. Gavin Lux was, for the organization, exclusively a second baseman, and if he's not hitting well, if they have to platoon him, there's really not a whole lot of flexibility that he has. I hope that he's able to find a little bit more room to be able to grow and succeed in Cincinnati, and if he does, man, that's a fun Cincinnati Reds team with Ellie De La Cruz, with Matt McLain in that lineup. You throw in Gavin Lux and some of the other hitters that they have in there. It's a fun one. Be able to see what they have. Let's see. Chuck Huddleston, Grove has had a good attitude about his role. I appreciate that about him. Absolutely. And I think I'm excited to see what he's able to do going forward. Doesn't mean that he's going to be the greatest pitcher in the world, but he still has a lot of talent. And I believe that's going to do it here. Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. I'm running out of time that I have to be able to interact with you guys. We will be live again Wednesday night here, Dodgers Dawgs. I believe Casey and I will be live at that point. So thankful, so grateful for each one of you guys and your continued interactions with us and support here at Dodgers Dawgs. I'm excited about the Los Angeles Dodgers. 1 week away from pitchers and catchers reporting. February 20th, the Dodgers are going to be playing their first spring training game, opening up spring training games for all of Major League Baseball versus the Chicago Cubs. It is past Groundhog Day, which means baseball is practically here, and I couldn't be more excited about that. Until next time, thank you so much for joining, and go Dodgers.